Welcome back. We're at the end of 2023 and rolling to 2024. The last several videos have been deep dives into jumping right into work and metalwork and welding. I want to take a moment and step back and do an overview of where we are, where we came from, and just kind of look over the metalwork and see everything that's been done this past year and in the past. As you may or may not be aware, I've had this car for a little over 10 years, and a lot of it was I was overseas. I started working on it, and then it got put into storage for about 7 years. And only just at the start of this year, I was able to get it shipped and dig back into it and get a lot of work done. So I just want to walk over everything that has been done kind of this year and everything with metalwork, because there is a lot of metal on this car that is not original and was added recently. So starting at the top of the car, when I bought this car, there was obvious damage on the roof. And I'll show you exactly what this is from, what this is from on the other side, but you can tell that whatever they put on here, here's, a good 1/8 inch plus of filler, and there's some spots where it's even thicker. But clearly it had problems underneath the paint. And this was not a surprise. There was no headliner in when I bought the car, so it was very clear what happened. And I'm going to flip it over now and let you see. So here is the underside of the roof. And you can see where it was painted and then where it wasn't. So everywhere that wasn't painted up here, I think it was open air. And I think also in the Washington area, looking back at old documents that I was given. So there's surface rust on all of this. Honestly, if it weren't for the other things I'm about to show you, this would be usable. It's not rusted through, it's just honestly surface rust. But here's the big problem. Someone, I don't know if you can see that large racetrack going around there. Someone, it looks like, had a sunroof in this at one point, and then later on at some point someone repaired it. You can see they flanged the metal, they recessed this panel back in. It's that nice red color I've seen other places. I don't know if they stole it from the same car or not, but obviously they on the top side used a ton of filler, and things leaked. If they had done a better repair job, this might have held up and might not even have been a concern. But I couldn't let that stand, and the easiest way to do this right is replacing the roof. So I actually did get a Dynacorn roof, and one of the scariest moments in this entire project was cutting into the roof for the first time. I still am, but at the time I was a very novice welder, and I'm still not much better than a novice welder, but a little terrifying getting that done. But that being said, got the roof off, the new one in, it is welded all the way around. As I dug into that, I noticed more and more things. So I took the roof off and found out the drip rails had big problems. So got new drip rails welded in. And then this still has yet, 7 years later, still has yet to be filed down. But I put some of the Eastwood leadless lead in there and started to smooth things off. And you can tell this was probably a couple weekends before I found out I was moving. And then after, I still haven't flattened out that lead yet. But that is obviously to come. One of the other things that one of the other places that had a lot of rust concerns, I'm forgetting what this is called, but the cross brace right above where the trunk goes, and then the back seat support here. So both of those got Dynacorn replacements for the upper and lower, and got that all welded in and looking good. So one of the things that I did that is a non-original modification, if you will, 1967 did not have a torque box on the passenger side. It has a lot of rigidity. It ties the rocker to the frame and the firewall and just kind of ties these three sections together. So I did add that. They had that in 1968, but not 1967, except on convertibles. And I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm missing something, but yeah, I wanted that addition. It's not stock, but it's also not something I'm worried about being perfectly stock. So that is a huge addition there. So taking a look underneath the car, you can see I also replaced each floor support. There's obviously the firewall, the original, or at least original when I got the car, transmission cross member there. And you can see probably there's some relief cuts I needed to make, and that's the one I need to still clean up. And then looking down the frame rail here again, the old frame rails were beaten to heck. I don't know if they were used as jack points many times, but just over the years, it was they've seen better days. But yeah, you can see the nice penetration there on the welds coming down through the floor, and then the two torque boxes together and the gussets here. So yes, it's a lot of what won't be seen. Not too many people are going to be creeping under here, but when I first went to go inspect the car before I bought it, that is one of the first things I did was crawl underneath and saw those beaten floor supports and kind of issues with the floor. So I'm much happier with how it is now. Eventually, I'm going to raise up the car and or put it on a rotisserie. We will see. And do things like address some of these holes. There's you wind up with holes when you use sheet metal screws to hold things down. So yeah, it needs to be cleaned up and some welds addressed and a lot more work done underneath, but that's coming much later. So I also, at the time, knew that the floor had issues. I was thinking maybe some patch panels. I knew the driver's side was just about toast, so I cut that out and didn't want to put it in storage, so it's actually missing. I tend to save things until everything's done. So I saved basically everything I've cut off and a few pieces that I cut out and did put in storage for the brackets, etc. So fast forward to 2022 timeframe, get the car back and continue working on the floor. I had some videos going back and forth about if I do halves or full floor plan. I obviously opted for the full floor pan because here's the old entire floor, minus a few sections I sectioned out. There was also, back at the transition pan, let me see if I can show you, some really gnarly repair work and what's left of what you can see from where someone mangled some of the metal, and the inner structure was fine, so it wasn't air shocks, it doesn't look like. And someone suggested to me, either in a comment, I honestly can't remember, I'm sorry, but what probably happened is they cut this away to loosen the shocks. Either they were frozen on and they needed to get a tool on there or something. So interesting observation. So I wound up replacing the top part of this skin. I didn't have to replace anything underneath, but while I had it out, instead of sectioning it in, I just replaced the whole thing. If you look, this is back by in the trunk. It is heavily pitted, probably usable. It's not rusted through, but while I was at it, I had the whole replacement. I went ahead and just replaced the entire transition pan. It was easier than sectioning it in, and now everything looks beautiful and lines up great. And as you saw in other videos, if you saw in other videos, the entire new floor pan is in, the new seat risers are in, and let me just pan over to the cowl. I knew that I was probably replacing the cowl, and It's not as bad as some that you've probably seen if you look into these, but it was bad enough that I went ahead and replaced the cowl, both upper and lower. The upper maybe could have been saved. There's some spots that aren't wonderful, but me being what I am, I kind of did a little bit of damage getting it out, and it was going to be a lot easier just to not worry about it, replace it, and there's the end result. I'm really happy with how this turned out. Especially, this is one of the more nerve-wracking things, the firewall and cowl area. So kind of moving forward, this is the firewall. For a while, I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to replace it. But looking at the kind of rust in the corners, the wings I had to cut off to remove it a little more cleanly. Looking at the rust in those areas, and then also this is where the brake booster mounts. Someone did some interesting modifications and additional holes to get whatever they did here to fit in. And instead of drilling holes, they just kind of pried things apart. Between that, the rust issues, and everything, while I was at it, I replaced the firewall as well. And you can see the new firewall is all intact. The brake booster mounts up perfectly now. I don't have to worry about any of the concerns, and I'm super thrilled with that. Kind of looking at everything all at once, it looks a little daunting. One of the things that I was sure to do was do this in stages. If I had cut all of this out at once, the car would have collapsed on itself. So I was sure to support, first off, support as I went along. I've got tons of those little RV stands and supported everywhere that I might cause weakness if I cut away structure. Take tons of measurements. I measured, you can see I've got measurement marks and Sharpie all over the place. Measured everywhere, measured diagonal, brace things up where you can, get things back to where they go. And yeah, roof was first. I did the back brace separately. I did the cowl and firewall as their own thing and then put everything back together. You might have easier access if you cut everything out, but unless you have a jig and you're confident with where everything goes, which I am not, this was definitely the easiest approach. And for wrapping up the metal on this car, I want to talk a little bit about the direction I'm going with it and what's left to do. So compared to all of this, there's honestly not that much left as far as metal goes. There's still obviously a ton left to get this car done. But as far as metal goes, there's not that much. And it's mostly here in the passenger fender apron area. First and foremost, there's the obvious, obvious hole where the battery goes. This is a pretty common rust out area. Let me see if I can get you some light. So this is a pretty common rust out area for Mustangs. And I went ahead, well, first, before I show you that, additionally, if you look along here, it's got a nice wave to it and some nice dents. I don't know if someone, yeah, there you go. I don't know if someone hammered on this or what, but this is what it looks like now. So for the front, I went ahead and got a replacement front apron. I think this one came from CJ Pony Parts, and we'll see how much of it I wind up using and what modifications need to be done. You can see it's got the stamping holes and they appear to be in the right spot, and obviously the mounting points for the battery and whatnot. We'll see if I replace the whole thing or if I section parts in. The real trick with this one is I've got my VIN stamping. So this is one of 3 on the aprons, 2 on the driver's side over here, 1 over here. if I can, I would prefer to not touch this and leave it alone. I might make a cut here and kind of hide the seam behind the apron, or sorry, behind the battery, and replace just down there, and then see if I can hammer and dolly this flat. Or I might section this into the new panel. That's kind of TBD. We'll see what I decide as I go along. On further back, one of the things I did notice was the hinge mount points. There's, I don't know why, but we've got some holes here and some really terrible welds there and there, apart from my own terrible welds, but that's another story. And additionally, kind of this part aside, we have similar damage going along there. This one, no VIN, so I'm less worried about replacing. I do have a replacement panel for that here. My original thought was to just use the top section to just replace here and then on back. I did have some damage when I removed the little transition pieces that connect to the cowl. So I was thinking just replace just the top or section into the top. With this damage here, I might go further down. We'll see. We'll figure out the best strategy for that. The little transition pieces on both sides were essentially unusable. So I do have these replacements, and they look like they might fit, kind of. Again, it's one of those, we'll see how well they fit. It's not too bad on the sides and back. This flange here obviously needs some help. So we'll position things where they need to, and if I need to rebend this or drop this down, we'll make it work. I'm not too worried there, but that is going to be the bulk of the metal work left, is just dealing with this apron, which is a lot less scarier than cutting out huge structural chunks. So I'm really happy with that. There's one other thing I want to show you as far as metal goes. Okay, I am squeezed at the back of the car right now. This is the driver's side tail panel. You might be able to see this black is from rust converter that I sprayed on a while ago, but you might be able to see there's a few holes here that are damaged, which is really curious. So the rest of the panel appears to be mostly intact, but yeah, there's a good example. If it'll focus, you can see the pinhole that's there. And let me show you the other side. So if we look under here, it looks like there's a lovely set of repairs. What I did was I ordered a new tail panel, and I will be 100% honest with you. I know it exists. I can't find it, and I don't know why. It's not up with the fenders. It's not kind of in an obvious spot, and we're talking about a whole tail panel. It should be obvious. I guarantee you it's somewhere. We'll find it. But I don't have an interest in cutting everything apart. It looks like while at some point in its history, there was a leak here and it rusted down here. And you can see I'm not usually one to complain about other people's MIG welding, but I don't know if I would accept this. So I'm unsure right now. I really don't want to replace the whole panel. But as of right now, I'm unsure if I section in just where the holes are or just make patches for down here. I'm leaning towards the latter and just patching down at the bottom where those repairs are. Obviously the bumper won't be there, the extensions won't be there, so I'll have access and I can just put in a nice patch with these holes just replaced, and I won't have to worry about all of that's going on. So other than that, I've shown this a long time ago, but surprisingly, the fenders are good. The wheel wells in the rear look good. I don't know. I know work has been done on this car in the past. The trunk area looks good. Not 100% perfect, but definitely good enough. Apart from a few small spots that need repair, the metal on this car is actually really solid. We've looked at the frame rails before. Those are all intact. The shock towers do have that nice weld job. Talking with some folks, if it cleans up fine, don't worry about it, is kind of their take. I'm not worried about it being concourse correct or absolutely perfect. So I will clean up and just make sure while I'm working the engine bay, make sure there's no serious cracks or anything that I should be concerned about. But yeah, that's most likely going to stay put, and I won't have to freak out about that. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a huge thank you to a lot of folks. But one in particular, Barry at Joe Daddy's Garage, he's got an amazing video series where you can see basically anything you want to on metal on these cars from someone who, unlike me, he's done this tons of times before and he knows what he's doing as opposed to me figuring it out. I'll put one of those YouTube channel links on there, but if you're undertaking anything of this nature and you haven't done it before, ask questions, go to those forums, find other folks who have done it and who are good at it. If you are coming to my channel for that kind of information, I appreciate it. Understand I am not an expert. I mess up a lot of things. Occasionally I get something halfway right and don't have to redo it again. But yeah, there's a ton of resources out there. I recommend you go find them, reach out to them. Almost everyone I've met or talked to on this subject has been more than happy to offer their words of wisdom, their advice, and some of these things where in hindsight it's obvious and why wouldn't I think of doing it that way to begin with, but might not be the way that I would approach it. So, okay, that is the short story of metal on this car. It's been at times scary cutting into things and cutting apart huge pieces of structure, exciting as things go back in. And I've learned a ton, and probably the amount I still have yet to learn far outweighs what I have learned so far. All right, if you're still with me, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in seeing me continue putting this car back together, wrapping up the metal work, and then moving on to hopefully epoxy primer and working on the engine bay, working on suspension, etc., stay tuned. There is obviously a ton more to go.